Welcome to the Help Her Be Brave podcast show, where we have great ideas on how we can help save lives. I'm Amy Ford.
And I'm Jessica Russo.
Today, we are talking to a new friend named Shane Pruitt, and he recently spoke at an event me and Jessica went to. It was just a couple months ago, and it was like, I don't even know what it was for, but it was a prayer. It was like a prayer, day of prayer or something.
Yes. At the Dream Center in Plano.
Yes. Yeah. Or the Hope Center.
Yes.
The Hope Center in Plano. Anyways, it was so good.
Like, amazing.
He was the keynote, and we were both like so pumped afterwards. But he just has a heart for the next generation, and he is a part of the North American Mission Board and their Next Gen. He has a Next Gen on Mission podcast, and so he talks about how we reach the younger generation. How do we talk to them? What are they craving? What are they needing? How do we stand out? And it just was so amazing, and I just was like, I know our leaders.
We were on fire when we left.
Yeah, for sure. So he's got a lot to say. We're gonna bring him on. Hey, Shane.
Hey, thank y'all so much for having me on. I am truly honored and humbled by the invite to be on. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, me and Jessica just really were inspired by hearing you speak recently about your book. I can't wait to read it. And but there were so many things that you said that I was like, oh my gosh, all of the Embrace Grace leaders, or just even pregnancy centers that are discipling moms, like they all need to hear this message, because you talk about discipling and ministering, sharing the gospel, doing life with the younger generation. And I think when we talk to potential leaders of Embrace Grace, some of the things that you said about, some people are like, oh, maybe they won't think that I'm cool enough, or sometimes they're
we'll
like,
never be.
Right. I know. Right. Sometimes they're like, well, if they only knew my story, then they wouldn't, I'm not perfect enough or whatever. And I love how you just talked about vulnerability like that and transparency. That is what they crave right now. So I just wanted to have you on and just to talk a little bit about what is this younger generation? What do they need and crave? And how can we, as the older generation,
we're still young.
Well, yeah, I guess I saw geriatric millennials. Did you see the post about that, Shane, that's going around right now?
No, but I love the term.
Yeah, it's
That's
like the
hilarious.
older millennials. There's geriatric millennials. That's offensive.
Oh my goodness.
Rude.
And my wife and I feel that, like, there's some young couples that we're discipling, and we just a couple of weeks ago I had lunch with one and just spent 2 hours with them, and we walked away and we're like, that's such a cool young couple, and it makes us feel so old, because we used to be that cool young couple. Now the ones that are like coming to us with advice like we're their parents or something,
Seasoned and mature.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, share your heart with us.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would say, say a generation that is like currently what we'd say, like maybe an emerging generation, meaning they're really coming into adulthood with this Generation Z, those that are currently like just graduated from college, or those that would currently be like college age, young adults, older teenagers. And then even some of those really young, like millennials, that are in their like mid to late 20s, early 30s. Is, one thing that I believe about that generation is that they are agenda weary, but authenticity hungry.
Oh, that's
and I want to say that again. They're agenda weary, but authenticity hungry, meaning like they're very aware of like cultural agendas. They're very aware of the fake. They're very aware of the polished and things that almost seems like a sales tactic, or I'm trying to get you to be exactly how I want you to be because it's more like me. And so I think they're very agenda weary, but they're very much authenticity hungry, because there's fewer and fewer just real, authentic, transparent people out there, and very few real, authentic, transparent organizations out there. And so I really believe this is a great opportunity for us to step into that space. And so I say this all the time, is that young people really, at the end of the day, they don't really care how old you are. Because I think a lot of times that's probably a lie of like the enemy, or really a lie that we kind of tell ourselves, is that go, well, I can't connect with someone who's younger because I'm not cool. So even like say even in the church world, right? Typically that's our default, right? Hey, if we want to reach teenagers or young people, or we want to connect with them or young adults, then we got to get somebody that's just a tad bit older than them, dresses really cool, wears certain shoes, inked up, and we got to get somebody like that because that's who they'll listen to. And I always just say, at the end of the day, like, be you. Like, if that's you, like, if you are the person with the sleeve tattoos and the tighter jeans and the Jordan sneakers and those kind of things, that's awesome. Be you. If that's really you, be you. But if that's not you, if you're more of, older and mom jeans and Dockers and all those things, hey, that's okay. Like, be you, because here's what I promise you. If you are the more, let's say guys, if you are the more Docker wearing guy and you try to be different than that and try to go, oh, I'm going to start hanging out with young people, so I'm going to wear tight jeans and Jordan sneakers, they'll sniff that out immediately.
My
I
son,
say whoever you are,
my son
be
is
you.
yeah, he's 22, I think 23, and he always uses the word poser. He's like,
poser,
he's a
yeah,
poser.
for sure. They'll sniff it out
That
quickly.
sounds bad.
And so, I'll give you an example that just happened recently, and I love it. And so we take like young adults, like college age, late teens, early 20s. A couple months ago, I was speaking in a conference in another state. I got there a little early, went to the local coffee shop to kind of get prepared, look over my notes. And I look across the coffee shop, and there's this guy, and I say it in a joking way, like this guy, he looked like he was like Noah's grandson. You know what I mean? Like the guy had to be 182 years old. I say that tongue in cheek. Like he was probably like in his mid 80s, and sitting around the table with him were 4 college-age guys. All 5 of them had a Bible open, and those 4 college-age guys were hanging on every word that guy had to say.
Oh, wow.
And I want to say, like, really young people don't practice ageism, meaning like they don't really care how old you are.
Yeah.
They just want to know that you care about them and to be real and authentic, because at the end of the day, young people aren't looking for cool people. They're looking for real people.
Oh, that's powerful.
That's so true. And my son Jess, he just graduated from ORU, and when he was in Tulsa, he had a mentor that was probably in his mid 70s. His name's John Beasley, and he's amazing author, evangelist, and he would go to a coffee shop once a week, and they would have, and it was just the highlight of his week. He loved learning from him and talking with him. And they did that for several years, and they still are very close, even though Jess isn't in Tulsa anymore. But it's so true. It's just they crave authenticity, vulnerability, and just realness.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when you think of like reaching young adults and college students right now, like the name that would immediately come up with like Louis Giglio with passion, right? And when you look at Louis, he's in his 60s and he's fully whitehead, And so and here's the guy where you go, who is the one who's speaking to a whole generation of college students? It's a guy in his 60s,
Yeah. So true.
And so you also, when we heard you speak the other day, that it stood out to me about just how this younger generation, a lot of them have never even been to church. And I know with Embrace Grace moms, we find out that they're pregnant, we invite them to come to church. They are a lot of times very apprehensive about walking into a church, obviously with being pregnant, having an unexpected pregnancy, but they're just like not really sure what to expect. After they come to the first class, they're always like, I thought you were going to tell me I was a screw up. They come for the baby shower because they get free stuff. And that sometimes is their incentive. And so they kind of brace themselves that they think it's going to be this awful experience. And I hate it that that's what the unchurched think that church is, that it's about behavior modification when it really should be about a heart transformation. And so we're very open. Like we train all of our leaders that the first class that they ever come to is leaders just share your stories. Like we all have our stories.
Yeah.
And you can just immediately see the walls coming down because they're like, oh, okay, well, if that's her story, that's way worse than my story. And if God did that for her, then maybe God will do that for me too. And they just kind of start opening up, and we don't immediately just start preaching the gospel. We want them to know that, this is the stuff that we've been through. This is what God's done in our own life. And then it just their hearts open up. But I wanted you to share a little bit about just this younger generation that a lot of them have never heard the gospel. They've never been to a church before. And maybe they do have a perception of what they think church is, but how we can change that.
Yeah. Let me just say this from the beginning, and really to the person who maybe is a little apprehensive about church or engaging with the church. Let me speak to you first. Is like, I just want to encourage you this to go, listen, like, whatever you've done that you feel is a mistake, or you feel like you've done things you're not proud of, I want you to know that church building is full of people who have done things they're not proud of and made mistakes. True. That's what the grace of God is all about, you know? And so I just want to encourage you also to know there's no perfect churches. So even if you start engaging and you see something that's not perfect, or you go, oh man, that person is like a hypocrite or whatever, I just want you to know there's no perfect churches, because there's no perfect people. In fact, my first pastor used to say this: if you ever find a perfect church, don't join it, because you'll be the one to mess it up. You know, so there's no perfect, so really church is the perfect place for imperfect people. Now, I want to talk to us church folk for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We know that to be true, that church is the perfect place for imperfect people. The cross of Jesus exists because we were sinners separated from God. We've all done things to break God's heart. We are all done things that we're not proud of. So don't forget that, because I think if we're not careful, the longer we walk with Jesus, we'll almost forget the grace of God in our life.
Yeah.
And if we're not careful, we'll start walking into some self-righteousness, which the Bible calls sin. That's more sin. So, like, remember, like, you're not perfect. And so don't have this, like, perception of yourself that you put off this perception to where you make people feel uncomfortable because they're walking through some struggles. Remember the grace of God in your life. Remember what God has saved you from. And remember how you need the gospel in your life as well. And that church is a perfect place for imperfect people, and you're not the perfect one. Jesus is. So we have to remind ourselves of that, because there are some even personal experiences where I've seen where people are coming into church and they're being open and transparent, because we say we want to be a community of people who are open and transparent. But the moment that person shares something or they are transparent, then they are treated differently. Let's not be that way. That's already a perception that's in place. So let's prove the perception wrong. You know, sometimes if you just start Googling why is church that, you know, and you just start Googling that, all these suggestions that come up that fill in that Google search, and they're all negative. So let's prove people wrong. And so, you know, one of the things you can do is, yes, be transparent, be authentic, but be vulnerable. I always say this. I think we throw all those words together. Authentic and vulnerable are two different things. Yeah. Transparent and vulnerable are two different things. Authentic is like, you're real. Like, I'm going to be real. I'm going to be me. I'm not going to try to be someone I'm not. I'm going to be me. That's authentic. That's real. Transparent is like, okay, hey, I'm going to be honest with my views or whatever, struggles, all that. That's transparent. Like, I'm even going to be honest with my struggles. Vulnerable is, I'm going to be honest with my mistakes, and I'm going to be honest with my story, even when it's ugly, because it shows how beautiful the grace of God is. And so be vulnerable to go, hey, your journey looks different than mine, but here's where I've messed up. Here's my fears. Here's my doubts. Here's where I've needed the grace of God in my life. And guess what? Here's some areas where I still need the grace of God in my life. Because when you open up like that, it gives the other person permission to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was even true in our story, because we have 5 kiddos, 3 through adoption. Our 8-year-old son he's adopted from Uganda, and he suffers from cerebral palsy and epilepsies and seizures. And when we first adopted him, now I travel and speak full-time, work for a denomination, author, those kind of things. But at that time, I was the lead pastor of a local church. My wife and I were struggling. It was a fast-growing church. And so we had to pretend it like we had it all together. So we would say all the spiritual jargon, right? God is good all the time. God is good. # too blessed to be stressed, right? And we were struggling, and we weren't being honest. But on the inside, we were imploding. Yeah. And we finally got to a place through some good ministry, through prayer, through counseling. We're very honest about that. We went and journeyed through counseling, and we got to a healthy place. And guess what? Then we started being vulnerable. Like, we were authentic believers, but then we went to a whole area of being vulnerable. And the moment we did that, our church just went through a whole another level of spiritual maturity, because it gave permission for others around us to be vulnerable. So, hey, if we want to minister to vulnerable people, then we have to be vulnerable people.
We have the perfect way for you to activate your community to change lives and save generations. Grab your copy of the brand new Help Her Be Brave book to discover your place in the pro-life movement, and then start a book club. You can host a Help Her Be Brave book club in person or virtually. We'll send you all the tools to make it fun and easy, and all you have to do is invite your friends and family. Head over to helpherbebrave.com and sign up to receive your free book club toolkit that includes a leader's guide, social media graphics, conversation starters, and so much more. If we were all doing our part in helping women be brave in their choice for life, we really can make abortion unthinkable. Start with hosting a book club today. Visit www.helpherbebrave.com.
That's so good.
So
Okay,
good.
you shared a little bit about you and your friend were at a restaurant asking the waiter to pray and was shocked by his response. Can you share that story?
Yeah. So, are you talking about the one where you say never been to church before?
Yep.
Are you talking about that one?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I live out, I live in the suburbs of Dallas, Texas, which Dallas, Texas literally is, by statistics, the mega church capital of the world. Like, we have more mega churches per capita per square footage than any place in the world. You can throw a rock in Dallas, Texas and hit a church that is led by not just a locally known pastor, but worldwide known pastors, right? All over just the Dallas. So
We do it big here.
So here you are. Yeah, you look at it and you go, okay, that's the buckle of the Bible Belt. And I want to say this, with a generation coming up that is not a religious generation, the Bible Belt has busted with spiritual lostness. Meaning there's a whole generation of Gen Z who are, statistically speaking, by the way, the least religious generation we've ever seen, who don't know anything about church. They didn't grow up going to vacation Bible school, drinking Tang and eating fake Oreo cookies. They didn't. They don't know the Bible stories. They don't know anything. So we have to be careful of our religious jargon that we just throw around because they don't understand those terms. So, not too long ago, a pastor friend and I were eating lunch in Dallas, Texas, where there's a mega church on every corner. And we got in a gospel conversation with our waiter, he was 19. And anyway, I always ask this question to our waiter or waitress: hey, we're about to pray for our food. Is there anything we can pray for you about? And he shared some things. And then we got in this conversation, and here's what we found. He's lived in Dallas, Texas his whole life. He's 19. He's never been to church. He's rarely heard God. He definitely never heard the gospel before. And I even kind of we got, in a fun conversation. So I even jokingly with him, I go, hey, have you ever even held a Bible? And he was like, never. He literally knew nothing. And he grew up in the shadows of mega churches. So two things that should tell us. Number one is you got a whole generation growing up that is not religious. They don't have a church background. They don't understand cultural Christianity. And I would say this, cultural Christianity is disappearing, by the way. The second thing, on some level, that should be an indictment of us, of the church, to go, hey, we got to get outside the walls of our building. Yes. That we can't just operate as come and see. We got to go and tell,
Yeah. So,
for sure.
So true. And I just think that is a challenge to us all to really be looking for people that are, whoever is serving us, who, they're not robots, they're real people, and they're wondering if God sees them or if God is real, or, I've heard so many different stories of just people being Holy Spirit led and felt like they were supposed to go, say a word to someone, a perfect stranger, and how that stranger was like, that is exactly what I was wondering or what I needed to hear. And we're at a time, it's always time, but we're really at a time right now where it's like we are the church everywhere we go, and we have to be the church and represent Jesus everywhere we go in the best way. And, being vulnerable and all of that is crucial as well. And so I just hope that all of our listeners that are listening right now, that maybe you've been thinking about starting a group, or maybe it's serving somewhere in the pro-life movement, but you've felt intimidated about about what your story is, or whatever that thing is, that lie that maybe you're believing about yourself, that I hope that you feel inspired by what Shane has to share today. And I would encourage everyone to get Shane's book as well. Shane, tell everyone a little bit about the book you just released.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. And I just want to say, before I talk about the book, I just want to thank everyone who listens to this podcast, is involved and all those things. And my wife and I care deeply about these kind of things. In fact, we say all the time, it's easy to stand outside of a building and hold a picket sign, right, with some kind of saying on there. It's a whole nother thing to put that down and really get involved in people's lives and journey with people. And like, hey, we're extremely pro-life. We're saying there's a whole nother realm of really diving in to help people journey through making these kind of decisions and doing those things and want to flourish as a human. So thank you so much for what y'all do, and for those that are involved in this kind of ministry. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, the book is 9 Common Lies Christians Believe, which is really an overflow of our story with our son Titus, who's gone through so many things. He's had 13 surgeries, in and out of the hospital, constant doctor's visits. He's in a wheelchair. He's nonverbal, non-mobile, and just that kind of journey through that. And so the book is that there are some common cliches, some unbiblical one-liners, for a lack of a better term, that we as the Christian community has adopted, baptized them, and made them a part of our vernacular that aren't necessarily biblically true. And it really started with a statement that well-meaning people, I don't want to be, I don't want to be snarky, but well-meaning people told us that with even our son, and still tell us that they'll like a statement like, God won't give you more than you can handle. You're like, well, the Bible doesn't teach that at all. So really that came through that journey of hearing that statement over and over. And we made a list. Okay, what are some other statements that we share as Christians that aren't biblically true? So statements like, God won't give you more than you can handle. Follow your heart. Believe in yourself. If a loved one dies, God gains another angel. And so each chapter takes one of those cliches that's like that. And then what does the Bible actually have to teach on that, and a better truth to move forward with? Because we know we typically share those well-meaning sentiments with people who are struggling, right? You don't say God won't give you more than you can handle to someone who's having the best day of their life. Usually you share it with someone who's struggling. And here's what we know. What's going to get us through those dark nights of the soul is God's holy word, and not some cultural cliche that's not even biblically true. So each one takes a cultural cliche each chapter, and then what does the Bible actually have to teach about that? And man, the response has been awesome. All glory to God. The book has been fun, and just literally hearing thousands of testimonies come from that, it's been really fun.
Okay, I have a question. Whenever you're like out and about and maybe speaking and traveling and in conversation with someone, and someone says one of those 9, like,
what's your comeback?
Yeah, what do you do? Do you bite your tongue and be like, "Ooh, I wrote a book"?
Do you hand them a book?
Well, yes, you hear it all the time. It's oh gosh, somebody's, multiple people have said it like this. So true. It's like, hey, after I read your book, I see those things everywhere.
I know, it's like a radar.
It's kind of like. It's kind of like when you buy a new car, right? And you're like, man, nobody has a black Ford F-150 in Texas. Yeah, right. But the moment you buy it, you realize everyone has one. Yeah, you're like, you realize they're everywhere. So it's kind of like reading this book where you're like, how silly is the statement, follow your heart? And then you see it on shirts. You see it on coffee mugs.
Oh my
you
gosh,
see it on
your heart will get you in
computer
trouble.
desktop screensavers. You see it on
like
our kids are in public school. You go up and down the hallways at the school, and there are posters everywhere. And so you see it everywhere, And so it really depends on the say. I always say this, like, if you're having a conversation with someone, and someone makes that statement, like, how do you divert back to it and go, well, really, here's kind of what the Bible says. If it's a conversation where you can navigate that. I always say this too, like, is you want to be careful, like, when is the right time to have this conversation, and so like,
don't
I've been
call them
in
out
ministry
in front of
a long
everybody.
time. Yeah, and and I think of like really a hard situation, like let's take the one of like God gaining another angel. I've been in ministry long enough where I've done plenty of funerals or memorial services where the casket is a lot smaller than it ever should be, right?
Yeah.
And so when you got this grieving mom who just buried her 2-year-old, and she goes, well, I guess God needed another angel. That's probably not the right setting to go, well, actually, you know what I mean? And
you
so,
say, yes, ma'am,
like,
it is.
yeah. But when cooler heads prevail, emotions are set to the side in those conversations for yourself and with helping others. I always say this is like, stick to the word.
Yeah.
Scripture is going to bring healing, not cultural cliches,
So
right?
true.
And so those are the right settings, you know.
So good. Well, I can't wait to read my book. Thank you so much, Shane, for being on today. I know that everyone will be so encouraged. How can people connect with you?
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. So Instagram, Twitter is just at Shane_Pruitt, Pruitt 78, Facebook, Shane Pruitt. And then website is just ShanePruitt.com, and you connect to some articles and videos and books, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Shane, thank you so much.
I love how he leads every conversation with such like passion and mission. Like there's this fire inside of him and you can hear it. And he's just so joyful. And the way he talks about this next generation. And, you know, sometimes we can be intimidated about like, am I saying the right thing? Am I using this slang in the wrong way? My kids give me a hard time. There's this phrase, when you're dressed nice, that you're dripping or something.
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
I don't know, but I say it wrong every time and my kids make fun of me. But I just love that he's like, just be vulnerable, be authentic, and like pointing out the differences in those things, because we can kind of confuse it and think, oh, I'm so authentic in my life, but that's not being vulnerable with your failures and your hopes and your dreams. And that's what they're craving.
Yeah, I know. And I love how he said that he was discipling to couples in his home. Like he just kind of threw that out there. Like that is so what we all need to be doing, is discipling and bringing them in and just doing life with people. It's not about, you know, teach me. It's about show me and watch it, and, you know, being around, bringing families together and reaching out to the younger generation is just so important. So I know a lot of times we disqualify ourselves or say we're too busy or say that, you know, we're not spiritual enough or we don't know enough of the Bible, or, you know, there's just every excuse.
We don't have to have it all together. But like even in my own life, while he was talking, I was thinking about how much I crave time with my older friends that are older than me. Like I love to hear their stories and their life experiences and learning from them about how to be a mom and a wife and a leader. We can all inspire with something in our lives. And if we just take away their perfectionism in it and just do life with people, we can change it all.
Yeah. And so if you're listening and you've been thinking you want to lead an Embrace Grace group, but you've worried that you're too old, you are not too old. Like these
mom jeans are allowed, I hear.
Yeah, mom jeans
they're cool again, I guess.
They are. They're cool. They're cool again. They are just craving to be heard and to also just to learn, you know, from someone and to do life with people and make sure that they're not alone. And God, you know, or Jesus, that was one of the last things he said before he went to the cross. He said, go and make disciples. Yes. And that must have been something so important to him, because he brought all his disciples together to tell them that. And that must have been like the thing that he was like, okay, he knew he was about to die. And he said, I need to tell you something else. Go and make disciples. And that is something that wasn't a suggestion. It's not just, you know, oh, it'd be cool if you did this. Like
it's a command.
It's a command. He really wants us to do this. So, and we're losing this next generation. So it's going to take all of us, and we're not disqualified.
Yes.
God is who qualifies us. So
go and get outside of those walls.
Just try it. Try to lead an Embrace Grace group, or go serve at your pregnancy center. Get involved. These moms want someone to do life with, and they need and crave community. So, and if you're interested in starting a group, just go to embracegrace.com and you can click on the lead a group or start a group tab and fill out that information. An email comes to you immediately with all the information on how you can start. It has a sample chapter of our curriculum. And just check it out, and you will love it. You will love leading. It's so much inspiring. Fun. Just this past week, one of the leaders at one of our other, we go to Gateway, and one of the Gateway campuses, and one of the moms got a car, and so she just sent me like all these pictures of a mom being blessed by a new car.
Totally made me cry just looking at the pictures.
I know, it's so like, it's just the sweetest thing. It's just church, all of us doing life together. So check that out. Also, check out helpherbebrave.com. It's got lots of ideas on how you can help save lives through the book, through this podcast. Share this podcast with your friends, and subscribe through iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. And just tell everyone about us, because if we all are doing our part and helping in the pro-life movement, we really can make abortion unthinkable, which is where our heart is. So thank you so much for watching today. We'll see you next week.